Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning again with Mindstone. So just wrapping up for last week's class. So we talked a little bit about self-care. I got a lot of really great feedback on our classes on self-care. So just to recap, we talked about physical self-care, emotional self-care, and finally mental self-care. So today I wanted to discuss a very important social determinants of mental health, which is balance. So it's always important for us to be achieving balance in terms of emotional balance, work-life balance, and of course, everyone can tell you, even in our physical lives, balance is very important. In an example would be, of course, to have a balanced diet and lifestyle. So keeping balance in mind, one of the questions that was raised when talking about self-care is the importance of balancing self-care with the care of others, and of course, the time that we put into meaningful work. So self-care, the care that we give to others, and the care that we put into our work. So there's our three categories of care. And we're going to be comparing that to the amount of time and energy that we put into each category. So just to start, I want to just touch on the three extremes to give us a little bit of a better picture of what happens when you spend too much energy and too much time on self-care, on the care of others, and of your work. So the first extreme is self-absorption, what we call self-absorption. So that's what happens when we spend too much time on self-care. So that's when we're spending time on our physical, emotional, mental self-care. So we're really just doing things completely selfishly. This is the type of person that puts their needs above anyone else's. They generally have a perspective that their needs are always to come first. They usually have a perspective on life that, the world is a cruel place, and if you're not taking care of yourself, who's going to? Who will take care of you? So these are the kind of people that, generally speaking, are not very considerate of other people's feelings. They generally look at people as resources, so they may actually be a little bit on the manipulative side. They're always looking forward to bettering themselves over anyone else's. So this means that they also tend to not be very lenient for other people. They only do what's convenient for them and what will goals. So that's the first extreme when we talk about recognizing your healthy balance. So that's one extreme, is self-absorption. The other extreme is what we call other absorption. So this is the complete opposite of self-absorption. So this is the kind of person that puts everybody else's needs in front of their own. So these are generally people that are caregivers, their mothers, their fathers, their family members. This is the kind of person that really is in a situation where they're always putting someone else's needs in front of their own. A lot of the time, they need a lot of validation. They need a lot of approval from other people. Thank you so much, Brooke, Dominic, and Harel. Hi, Danielle. Thanks for joining in. So if you're just joining in, we're talking a little bit more deeply about self-care, and we're talking about how to balance self-care with the care that we deliver to others, as well as the care that we put towards meaningful work. So we just covered self-absorption. So self-absorption is the extreme on one side of the spectrum. So that's the kind of person that puts their needs above anyone else's. They believe that they are the most important person in their world. They believe that the world, almost revolves around them, and they believe that the world is a cruel place, and if you're not going to take care of yourself, who will? And then, of course, we're going into the opposite of the spectrum, which is other absorption. So this is the kind of person that puts everybody else's needs in front of their own. They also likely believe that they are responsible for the happiness of the people they surround themselves with. So either their family or their friends. They're always trying to put their needs first and their own needs second. So this is the type of person that needs a lot more self-care in their life. as they generally put everybody else in front of their own. And then finally, we have our third extreme, which is what we call an overworked person, or otherwise known as a workaholic. So this is the type of person that is constantly putting time and effort and energy into achieving their goals. They're constantly looking for ways to improve themselves, improve their productivity. They're the ones that believe that they need to work harder than others. They tend to be very type A. And they are also very big perfectionists. They believe that they can always do better. They put deadlines on themselves. They overwork themselves. And this is another kind of person that needs to invest in self-care. Otherwise, they may actually burn out, which is very common amongst workaholics. So all three extremes are unhealthy. What we want to achieve is a nice, healthy balance of all three of these extremes. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're putting our needs first, but at the same time that we're also investing in others. Because if we don't invest in others, and what tends to happen with people who are very self-absorbed is that their relationships generally suffer. Usually the people around them start to take notice that their needs may not be met. Some people can report saying that they're feeling used, or that they're being neglected, because the person in question is just so involved with themselves that they just don't put any time and energy in their relationship. So that's something that we want to avoid. In terms of other absorption, we want to avoid that extreme, because what tends to happen is being constantly absorbed with other people's happiness, it puts a lot of pressure on ourselves. It also makes it so that we're not putting enough time and energy into our own accomplishments. So that generally renders a lot of feelings of emptiness, a loss of self, a loss of self-esteem. We tend to be a lot more passive when we're absorbed by others. And that could lead to a lot of feelings of emptiness, loss of self, loss of self-esteem, which is something we want to avoid as well. And finally, overwork. So with overworking, it may seem like something that we want to aspire towards, because generally the workaholics tend to accomplish a lot. But again, having this extreme usually tends to affect relationships, because the person who is overworking is not putting in enough time and energy into their relationships. So their relationships could suffer. The people around them may feel neglected, because work always comes first above their own needs. And of course, self-care also suffers when you're a workaholic, which generally tends to make people feel burnt out. So all three of these extremes have a very important warning. One of the signals that you can identify when you're on the one side of the spectrum of self-absorption is you may actually experience that a lot of people in your life are starting to distance themselves from you. That's usually a pretty good indicator that your relationships and the people around you are starting to notice that you're not paying too much attention to them or paying attention to their feelings. So that's one indicator. Another indicator can show that you're not actually putting enough time and energy into meaningful work. So you're caring for yourself all the time. You're getting your nails done, you're getting your hair done, you're, engaging in hobbies, but you may not be actually putting enough time and energy into meaningful work, or putting enough time and energy into the service of others, which could be a really great source of happiness, is serving others. So that's one of the downfalls of being self-absorbed. When it comes to other absorbed, you can usually have indicators like the fact that you may feel empty, you are not accomplishing what you want to accomplish, your self-care starts to diminish, so you may feel like you're not even allowing yourself to have a good shower, or you're not allowing yourself to treat yourself for any of the work that you've been putting into others. Or maybe people are starting to take advantage of you, and your self-esteem is suffering. Those are all pretty great indicators that you are the type of person that is other absorbed. which means that you need to incorporate more self-care as well as more time and energy into your own meaningful work if you are to succeed. Finally, with workaholics, you can definitely see some indicating signals with work being a workaholic. So if you find that your health is starting to diminish, you're noticing, like Danielle mentioned, you start to melt down. Most of the time with workaholics, I know for myself, when I started to feel healthy and I started up my own company, which was BB Consulting, I was constantly working, constantly chasing my accomplishments, and my health started to suffer. And that's exactly what we want to avoid. So definitely keep monitoring your health, keep monitoring the health of your relationships, and keep monitoring your level of self-care. We always want to make sure that we're achieving balance, as balance is one of the most common and important determinants of good mental health. So we're always achieving balance. Like I said, not only should we focus on self-care, we also need to ensure that we're putting time and energy into the people that we love, and serving their needs, as well as putting our time and energy into meaningful work. And this doesn't have to mean a career. Generally speaking, those who are mentally ill often have to take time off work. So this doesn't have to mean, putting time and energy into a job. It could also be putting time and energy into a hobby or some meaningful volunteer opportunities, or anything that you feel will give you that sense of accomplishment. So that's our session for today, is achieving balance through self-care, other care, and meaningful work. I hope that was informative for you all. And let me know, tell me what side of the spectrum you think you're a part of. I know for myself, I've been on all sides of the spectrum. Generally speaking, where you sit in the spectrum is usually contingent on how you've grown up. So a lot of people have grown up with parents that say, hey, it's a cruel world out there. You need to take care of yourself and yourself only. Some people have grown up with the value that, our lives are to serve others. And both of them are right. There's no right or wrong here. The main importance here is that we are balanced in all of those things. One of the strategies that I've heard of today in terms of achieving that balance is color blocking. So when you have a schedule, I've actually seen a very smart person that I met who would actually put colors on all their engagements. So he had a color for self-care, he had a color for engagement with his family and friends, and he had a color for any other category. It could be health, it could be work, it could be romance, could be whatever you want. And just by scanning his schedule based on the colors that he had, he can see how much of each color he has on his schedule. So he can see how much time he's putting into each important category of his life. So just a thought. I've only really used that strategy when I was working. So I would categorize meetings versus, hard work and all that kind of thing. So you can always give that a shot. Other than that, self-awareness is number one. So just kind of check in with yourself and see how much time you're putting into yourself, others, and meaningful work. So I'm really happy for everybody that's joined in. Thank you so much for joining in and for hearing my latest Mindstone. Next, after this, we'll be talking about mindfulness, which is a very, very, very hot topic in the mental health world. So I'm excited to tackle it for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment in the Facebook group. I will also be putting a link to my YouTube channel so you can tune in there. And yeah, let me know if you have any feedback, if you feel like you're on one side of the spectrum or the other. I'd love to hear it. So thanks again for tuning in, and have an excellent week.